I had a dream last night that interpreted itself as I was having the dream. This is a strange experience, and it's kind of like being lucid in a dream where you're dreaming and you're in the dream itself. And so this sort of dual awareness showed up where I was having the dream, but the dream itself is interpreting itself. Now, I'm not fully lucid in the moment. I'm not going, oh, I'm in a dream, this is happening. But I'm experiencing the dream content, and I'm understanding this dream content relates to my life in a very specific way. Now, 2 nights ago, I had a dream about a reservoir that ebbed and flowed. And if you've ever gone by a dam, walked by a dam like we have in British Columbia, you know that sometimes it raises and lowers the water level, and you have to be careful about it. So that's what it was all about, where it's like there's this huge amount of dramatic energy, weather energy, when it goes up and down. And in the dream said, hey, this is your wife's impact on you kind of emotionally. You've got this reservoir, which is her emotionality, and the weather drama thing is your response to it. But actually, let's turn over here, and it developed a sort of device that looked kind of like a well. It was connected to the water level in the reservoir, but I could see the water level rise and lower down in a very safe, contained way. So I could get the information about my wife's emotions, but not take it on in a way where I feel in danger of myself when she's in a variety of ways. And now this is a resolution to a long pattern I've had that ultimately goes back to how I related to my mother in childhood. I'm working on these things. And as I'm working on that the dream showed up, it helped me navigate how to relate to my wife in challenging emotional ways. Now, the dream itself was really interesting because it explained itself to me as I was having it. So it was pretty potent, clear, and direct. So this morning I had another dream like this, but instead of my wife being there, and instead of being out walking next to the rivers, there's been this transformation of the landscape. And there's these domed houses and underground tunnels, and it's like a moon settlement or a Mars settlement, a space settlement, where I'm moving through these spaces, and I have this yellow legal pad of notes. And these are just, my dad was a lawyer, and he kept his notes on these things, and my note-taking style is based around what I saw him do, and there's some resonance there. And so I'm moving through these different spaces, and I know the portal ways between these spaces. And not a lot of people move from this room to that room in the dream. I'm one of the rare people that goes throughout all, and I'm taking notes about what's happening here. And in the dream, actually, I understand these notes are about my ethical crisis that if you've been watching the channel are aware of. If you haven't, let me just briefly summarize. About 2 years ago, I started to be concerned about harmful false memories and authoritative research associated with the PhD school I was in, CIHS. I was one of the first students to really jump on the newly accredited program that allows you to credulously study UFO or ET contact experiences. That's the Integral Noetic Science Department within an anomalous studies concentration. And now they're offering a UAP and consciousness studies concentration. And I think that's great. I'm interested in it. But it raised a lot of ethical concerns for me, and I ultimately left the program because my ethical concerns were not resolved. And so I had a dream that represented my journey with these ethical concerns. You want to know about those ethical concerns? I've got videos in the past. I've sort of unlisted some of them. I don't like talking about it. And this dream really tells me to shut my mouth about them and to move on in a way. And so I wanted to share that with you, share this journey, because I am trying to practice what I preach and talk more about dreams than about ethical concerns about out there people doing things. But just like with my family of origin issues, I found the verbal revelation that my dad was an alcoholic and had affairs, and the marriage almost fell apart, blah, 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 a few times. And I go, oh, that's why I felt we were dysfunctional. Everyone said we were good, but actually, and that dad was sober and blah, blah, blah. Actually, that was a lie. And I now understand why my intuition felt off from the reality we were living together. And so in that way, there was a naming of these issues and a release from my issues there. And those issues are what brought me into these challenges with my wife emotionally, where I'm trying to do a lot of work intellectually to figure out what's going on, because part of me doesn't believe people are truthful in things or whatever. That's not the case in this moment for me in that relationship, but in other relationships, like approaching the UAP or UFO and ET, NHI research communities, I have that sense of distrust because of the intelligence community, et cetera, et cetera. So in any case, I had these concerns, and I got to a point where I was absolutely frozen in my professional practice as a dream worker and hypnotist, as a student engaged in these research. And I go, I need help to figure this out. And I turned to the Institute, the California Institute for Human Sciences, and I raised the issues first with Dr. Sean Esbjørn-Hargens, who was a subject of my concerns, and therefore I needed to raise the issue in a different context. So I went to a level up, which is the ethical authority of the Dean of Research in the California Institute for Human Sciences. That role served oversight on these issues, and the committees, like IRB of the Institute, that had ethical authority over research done there. And so I raised concerns with the Dean of Research then, who was Jeffery A. Martin, and I had an interesting interaction with him that was so weird. I then filed a grievance in the school and demanded clarity about that interaction. And then a few months passed and I got notice, nothing's happening. About a year passes, I'm still somewhat frozen on this. I'm still concerned about it. I'm still taking notes. But in the dream, right, I go from these different spaces through these portals to these different rooms, and I'm talking to people. And as I'm talking to them, I'm eating the note at the same time as writing it. I'm consuming it. And at some point, which is right around the time I talked to Dr. Martin, in terms of the noting in the dream, my jaw opens up and it gets stuck open. And this has happened to me once in my life, right after my dad died. I yawned too big and my jaw kind of clicked out, and I was not able to click it back in until I relaxed these muscles enough that I could manually push my jaw back in. Like this. So my mouth was stuck, frozen open in the dream, associated with this note-taking experience. After I relaxed enough, I was able to complete my notes and to wake up out of the dream. And waking up out of the dream, completing the notes, gave me an intellectual understanding as to how I'm to emotionally relate to this ethical freeze, which is literally relaxing enough to shut my mouth. And yet I also am compelled as an inquirer, as a dreamer, to share the dreams that are important for me. And so in the last week, I went through some of this note-taking behavior, and I wanted to go on this journey with you so that you know what the magnitude of issues were at play when I asked CIHS to be the ethical authority over this issue. You need to know this as someone who's turned to me, who is interested in dreams and contact, and I've shared my journey with this ethical journey and crisis and how I've related to CIHS with you, and is over now. And is over because of the last week or so of research I've been doing. To be honest, the last 3 days, since Friday, I had an interaction with a professor who clued me in onto some of the drama that's happening here. And the last 3 days of research have really been the thing that helped me realize my jaw is open, but also helps me shut my mouth. So let's go here. Let's go share the screen. This is the grievance definition I had. I filed a grievance here. And I'm just going to highlight this because this gives you a kind of literary grounding as to why I was looking into what I was looking into and why it solved my conundrum here, right? Why the thing I'm looking into, the notes in the dream I'm taking, solved my issue. I go, okay, this has helped me understand why the Institute may have responded the way it did to my ethical concerns. And what happened was I actually wrote this document, Risk of Harmful False Memories in UAP Studies, as a justification for my leave of absence. I was frozen professionally, not making enough money to pay for tuition because I was unable to do sessions. I didn't believe in the ethics. I put all my eggs in the basket of being a PhD student to do this thing. I believed in it. And then this is not working. So I asked for help with this. I wrote a 200-page document, sent it to Sean Esbjorn Harkins, who read it. Thank you, Sean. And said, no, you need 20 pages. Make it really simple. Send it to the Dean of Research. He'll get back to you. And so I made this justification, sent it to Jeffery A. Martin. This just defines my issues, right? And I've talked about this before, so I don't need to get into it. I had a conversation with him. He basically says, we're not your ethical authority. Yes, on paper we are, but you're the actual ethical authority. Thanks. He also shared a story about how a government official said that Roswell was fake, and therefore he believed that Roswell myths are all false memory, and therefore he agreed with me that harmful false memories are concerned, but we need to handle it this way, that way, or the other way. And no, there's no changes that I've requested. This is really what I requested, an update to the research policy and student handbook, CIHS endorsed article, and a peer support group for students and researchers. I didn't get that. I got a weird conversation with Jeffery A. Martin, and it didn't go any further. So I wrote the grievance definition to initiate a process with the school to say, hey, I went on leave of absence. I don't like how you're handling my concerns. Please form a committee and address it. I believe that committee was in part chaired by Jeffery A. Martin. So I'm curious as to the response of the Institute now knowing what it knows about Jeffery A. Martin, right? Specifically, I'm talking about this paragraph. I wanted a sentence about using International Association of the Study of Dreams ethics in the Research Policy Handbook. And I wanted this paragraph to include risk of harmful false memories of alien abductions or whatever in the Wiser Super Experiencer study. That's all I was asking for a year ago. And I had conversation, email, and it just didn't end up. And then I filed the grievance and I got a response back, which is basically a non-response. Hey, we're not going to address these things. This is not a grievance. And we do ethical review and approval, informed consent process. They say, we do this. But the way they did that was by empowering Jeffery A. Martin as Dean of Research and President of the school to run the committees that do the IRB process, that runs probably the grievance committee, to be honest. And so the direction here is pretty clear where that's coming from, the president and dean of research by way of the provost, I guess. And so it's a non-response, and it confused me, to be honest. It deeply, deeply confused me, and it froze me for a long, long time until I watched this video.
This is not a...
Excuse me. With Jeffery Mishlove. And what's really, 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 really important for you to hear
Beautiful
is
printed
this.
copies. Go to newthinkingaloud.org. New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, a fully accredited university offering distant learning graduate degrees that focus on mind, body, and spirit. The topics that we cover here. We are particularly excited to announce new degrees emphasizing parapsychology and the paranormal. Visit their website at CIHS.edu.
Book 4.
All right, so as it continues, Jeffrey Mishlove talks about the Epstein Files, and he more or less advocates for understanding everyone's human. They deserve the benefit of the doubt. Very kind of stable things. He talks about how Deepak Chopra was in the Epstein Files. He talks about how he himself was in the Epstein Files, but only because of a forwarded email. And it doesn't look like anything wrong happened with Mishlove, but it does look like Deepak Chopra was deeply in that network, asking for girls and things like that. The sentiment here is pretty interesting about the comments here. It is showing that Mishlove is kind of out of touch with the gravity of the issues at hand, and I would sort of agree. Because this response is about Deepak Chopra and about his presence, but the other person in the Epstein Files, which a professor clued me in on Friday the 13th, is Jeffery A. Martin, right? And this is a letter that connects Deepak Chopra introducing Martin to Epstein, and Martin then sends this really long email. And if you really want to know about this, go into it, read it. It's on the justice.gov/Epstein website. Right? You can see the URLs and stuff like that. Really important to understand is that Jeffrey A. Martin was offering Jeffrey Epstein, offering to be a key advisor. Let's see. Key advisor. I'll be a key advisor for your life. They're studying weird stuff together. It is related to the weird stuff is basically Jeffrey A. Martin studied people with enlightenment experiences and developed an understanding that he has mapped those experiences or could induce those experiences, and that the weird stuff Epstein was looking for, like telepathy, telekinesis, etc., is available to enlightened people. And therefore, if you pursue enlightenment, you will get those experiences. After this, in which slave girls, right? So here, Martin is asking for slave girls and compensation for this situation, as well as Russians. Here, like it's just not good. It's very compromised, this email, and it sets up a communication between Epstein and Martin that takes place in a secret Proton Mail account where they share the credentials and they send a draft email or something to each other. I don't know what. The only other things we have in the Epstein Files here is that it looks like Epstein and Martin use Skype to try to communicate there, and then there's There's one other communication about buzzing in a hand, right? So Martin's like talking about, I think, some of their weird stuff experiences. And then Epstein talks about how he'd had more than 40 individuals try to induce these things, but he felt a buzzing in his hand when this guy Elan from Deepak did something, and that was it in terms of the phenomena so far. So I'm not sure what to make of all that. I want to point out that the notes
years, many of us who've been in
with Jeffrey A. Martin are longer and wider. Looking at his bibliography, starting with the God formula, going through what happened to Mr. Magic and the Finders, there's an uncomfortable level of similarity or resonances between the language Martin is using in his self-published books corresponding with the language surrounding Epstein's interest in weird stuff circles. And this researcher from the consciousness resistance suggests that the Finders, that the use of specific language and the word Finders in the case of Jeffrey A. Martin was a sort of covert nod to a 1987 issue around a cult involved with trafficking and things like that. In reading through this, some of his early, like Martin's work, and I did a little bit over the last few days, there is a kind of resonance of maybe like there's a fiction book and you go like this fiction seems to be predicting nonfiction here, or there's a sort of blurring of reality. And it really does paint a picture for me that Martin likely encountered someone from the Epstein network in his time at Harvard, and that really left an impression on him. And so he dedicated 10 years to getting into that network, and did so effectively by way of Deepak Chopra, and brought that network to CIHS in the way of his presidency and being dean of research, right? And having Chopra there. And I often question why and how the endorsement of New Thinking Aloud by CIHS has happened, right? Like, and who would let that happen in such a blatant kind of non-legalistic way, right? That's the question for me. Is like, there's no disclaimer. There's no like, hey, CIHS is supporting this. New Thinking Aloud, the views are their own of Jeffery Mishlove. None of that. It's just, we're brought to you by this, and we're bringing forward parapsychology. There's a merger there that's happened, and I don't understand it, and it doesn't seem academic to me. It seems like a business deal and a marketing deal. So I have all those questions, and I've been going through that. And this is kind of giving me a sense that Martin was working within a long-term network, a long-term goal to accomplish what he did, that the communications in the Epstein Files are like important for him and important for the history of CIHS, right, to understand. But so there's more to look into, but I don't want to do it, and I don't have to. Now that I know why and how the conversation around ethics got so weird between me and CIHS, as I go, there was an elephant in the room we had no idea about. The 99% of faculty, staff, and students who are good-natured, authentic, integral researchers had no idea about this stuff. And so there's a little bit of poison in the well, but I think the school can metabolize that, and it doesn't have to kill us all or whatever. But now that I understand why my interactions to unfreeze myself did not accomplish what I needed them to do. I needed the school to stand up as an ethical authority in this matter and to actually teach me how to be an ethical authority. They were unable to live up to the standards of accreditation or even the standards of the student handbook, right? The ethical standards, because the dean of research who oversaw all of this research, right? All of the research at the institute, and the president at that time was Jeffrey A. Martin, who was in this compromised position. And that bit of information is enough for me to relax into integrating his own advice that I, yes, am indeed the ethical authority here. And I don't need another ethical authority outside of myself to resolve this crisis. And it took me a year, and actually the revelation of his name in the Epstein Files for me to go, oh, it's not me. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. It's not Sean. It's not the department necessarily. It's not perhaps even the IRB. It was the whole thing there was not about me. It was not about ethics. And that's the horrible shame of what's going on, right? Is that there's ostensibly something going on in academic research. We're academics, there's integrity there. But if there's something so fundamentally off as to having the president and dean of research be so oriented towards a compromised network, or perhaps even working with Deepak and whatever else is happening, who knows? I don't know. I don't particularly care at this point. I think the school should do some sort of investigation, but I'm not going to push it. I've been threatening to go to the accreditation board and with the complaints to resolve this matter, because I keep thinking, God, this doesn't make sense to me. I need to resolve this ethical crisis to move on with my life. And it just doesn't make sense, and I need to have it make sense. And so I even started thinking about this stuff a few weeks ago, because I was like, God, I just have to resolve this. Like, it's not resolved. Their resolution letter from Stacey Gomes, provost, that basically said I didn't have a grievance and that they're not going to address these things, that's wrong. That's not according to the standards of accreditation or integral research or any of that stuff. They are personally liable for any harm of false memories that have come out of this issue because I informed them of the issue. I raised it according to the policies or whatever. They were informed by it with logical syllogisms based upon peer-reviewed papers and stuff like that. And they refused to engage with it. But I don't need to go now to the accreditation board, because what will they do? How many Jeffrey A. Martins are sitting on those boards? How many? Will it ever end? I don't know. And it doesn't actually matter to me, because what matters is the ability for me to relax and shut my mouth and focus on the messages of dreams. And that's what I'm going to do. So I just wanted to share that with you. I will end this with a really deep affirmation, right? So I really truly believe in experiencers, right? Like some of my ethics came out because I'm concerned about Chris Bledsoe and the super experiencer study. I actually really want those to succeed. I really believe in a lot of the contact experiences that surround Bledsoe and around the experiencer of NHI UAP contact narratives. I really do believe that. I really believe contact is happening in dreams. But I believe that if we're going to speak about it in authoritative research ways through accredited institutes, it has to be according to the standards of accreditation and academics. Now, I'm not an academic anymore, so I don't really have to do that work. And I can really focus on the storytelling around dream impact. Right. So I'm really excited about that. And this has really, this dream guidance I've received really is helping me move forward on this. Now, this video is about 28 minutes. I've recorded about 4 to 5 hours of draft of this video, and it just goes long, and I talk about things and I just go, nope, this does not embody the voice of the dream, right? The voice of the dream. So the voice of the dream would have me shut up and to be a embodied storyteller about the truth of dreaming, because actually the technology to produce the weird stuff and the enlightenment experiences that Jeffrey A. Martin was trying to sell Jeffrey Epstein on for $10 million or whatever, that technology is the human heart, the mind, the soul. You connect in with guidance every night when you go to sleep. They'll teach you about stuff. They teach me about stuff. And if I were to tune in to anything at all, which I tried doing, it's a message that comes from the book of Galactic Light. And this comes from my own ceremonial magic rituals. And I just want to end here with some quotes. This comes from the chapter called 16 Leah. That's the Aether. The dark magic of empire is illuminated and broken. Galactic wisdom is the source of true magic, of which all are invited to partake. All is love. That's the summary of what happened here in this chapter of the Book of Galactic Light, which is scrying. I'm having telepathic communication with non-human intelligences who are showing me things, also known as angel communication. And the message here, right, is that there's a new earth coming, and it comes through accepting unity consciousness, but accepting that the world has been under illusion, that machines are going to be the technology we need that produce teleportation and telepathy like phones and cars, but actually our hearts and our minds can do that. And that's really why I'm looking into the alien abduction stories, because it looks like there's evidences of teleportation and things like that through dream encounters, right? I go, these alien abduction things, often the local law like dreams, but there's actually a lot of evidence that bodies move during those experiences in paranormal ways. So it doesn't, saying something's a dream doesn't mean that stuff isn't real. And that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm going, hey, like the ethics are something we need to talk about, but they don't need to prevent our research. And this revelation, the Epstein thing, needs to be integrated, but it's not the core of the research, and it's certainly not the heart of CIHS, even though it was the dean and president, right? Like the heart of CIHS is the research, the researchers and students and all of that. The heart, you can actually feel it. It's there. I want to just affirm that really, really and truly. I'm looking for a quote. And so I'm talking to a deity, and he goes, this one wishes to be named as Hephaestus, finding deep resonances with that god. He has shown me that the perpetrators of that magical ritual and the illusions, these are like the bankers and the dark councils. I call on all of those who are here and now in this space to destroy that magic, money magics and false empires. Whatever power there is, let that be cast down. Let it be transformed into service to other alignment with these vows and principles. Let the illusion of this money system be dismantled. Let us, the human family, come into alignment with the natural abundance of Gaia. One comes forward who uses the technologies of this earth and those given technologies. This one comes forth in a light ship through time and space. This one lets me know that there was a transition it experiences, which is much like the one we're about to face. This one says that it is much easier than expected. There's a great fear about loss and death, scarcity, and things like that. But moving through that and tuning into the frequencies that are already present and presenting themselves, which are the waves of galactic energy being received by this earth, transmitted downward to her children. These frequencies are the ones that will lead us to the use of these ships, the light ships, the portal networks, the ability to communicate. And these things simply require that you be more open than closed, not naively so, but with a sense of discernment, tending to love more than fear. That is the only secret. That is the only act that needs to be done in order for this to be accomplished. I ask what the message was. He says, love. Gaia wants us to be happy, to be embodied, to be kind. She holds many gifts for us. We may learn to love each other and ourselves through receiving this field of love that is always present. So when I turn to my own wisdom, or the wisdom that has come through me, it invites a sense of forgiveness, but not necessarily tolerance of the abhorrent things. And it invites a sense of awareness that there is an illusion of power and fear that is distracting to us, that prevents us necessarily, perhaps, from entering the new earth. And that this illusion of power and fear and death and war and stuff like that will feel very scary, very scary. And that's one of the things that I felt in my own personal relationships is this sense of change. Like I've needed to change from the patterns that were established in my family of origin, my dad, the lawyer, those things I talked about and stuff like that, the confusions I've had about who I was as a person, but were revealed to me as I knew more about my family's history. I go, oh, okay. Healing from that feels like death to the part that is in those experiences. It feels like utter transformation because you'll be a different person at the end of it. That's why it feels like death. So at the end of this cycle of transformation, the funny thing is, it feels like it's so shocking, like, oh my God, it's going to end. It's the worst thing. But actually, it creates a possibility of being present and changing. And that's what I see actually here and now. The fact that these things are coming to light, we can deduce other things about the world now. And that's hopeful. And so I pray that you tune into the sense of unity consciousness and tune into learning, of course, about these things, but also forgiving, because there is a theme of reflection, right? As within, so without. And I would invite you to consider that before villainizing and alienating any one part of the human family, to know that you yourself have that part within yourself and that is active and challenging out there because it's reflecting something inside too. And so we need to then integrate and move on and not tolerate the horrible things, whatever, but actually do the work of actual forgiveness, which will require us to transform in a way that feels death, like death risks. I risk my PhD. I risk my professional standing on this sort of journey, and I haven't gotten a lot out of it except for a spiritual journey at this point, materially. And I'm going to shift to talking about dreams. Dreams, that's what it's about for me. Dreams as a portal. As a means of guidance, as a means of contact with the non-human world that's actually truly happening at night, in ways that seem like miracles and magic and alien technology to many an earnest researcher who's delved into these things. And so I feel quite liberated now, having shared with you the sacred story of my journey and the sacred story of my ethical issues that I'm now letting go of. I know that that journey in that way that I was driving for, that I was taking these notes for, that's not the point of my life. The point of this journey, the ethics thing, is for me to relax enough to shut my mouth and to focus on the wisdom that I can gain and share by navigating these spaces that many people don't navigate, these different rooms, like the dreaming realms and the waking realms and the transpersonal thing, but the science, qualitative, quantitative, it's an integral journey. Thank you for watching. Thank you for considering these things. May you be well.